What's up, Uncoverers, and welcome to the second live stream where we'll be picking apart Fawley Power Station. On your screen here you can see Annika Yee's In Love with the World exhibition from the Tate Modern, where she utilised autonomous creatures to respond to people and their surroundings within the main turbine hall of the Tate Modern. A nice comparison to the turbine hall within Fawley Power Station. The reason I'm showing you these is the autonomous creatures are similar and they operate in a similar manner to Marvin. The main difference being that Marvin is there to track and survey the site, whereas these are more visual aesthetics, but they're still autonomous creatures that work in a very similar way to Marvin. So jumping into the second part of this leaked Fawley document found on the subreddit we discussed in the previous live stream, we can see here in this first image that there's a lot of site finding going on. There's an obvious attempt to understand. You see here there's 3 different power stations. They've obviously selected Fawley Power Station as their site moving forward. But what's interesting is, as a positive, they're looking at a variety of contaminated ground types, which is a positive in a few of these, which is interesting that they're actually kind of seeking contaminated ground, as opposed to most site processes involve avoiding that as much as possible, but they're actually seeking out contaminated grounds. We might find out further on why exactly they're doing that. Another interesting thing is publicity. They talk a lot about secluded settings and privacy, so there's an obvious element where this project is going to be used as some form of private study, perhaps secretive study, testing, that they don't want the public or other kind of interested parties to understand what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah, I'm just trying to fit it. It looks quite eerie. Oh, we just had a donation. Thanks, iLord Noob, for the 10. Thanks a lot. He says this looks like a point cloud. Okay, so it's a point cloud. That means it could have been stored. That explains why we can see the power station and the kind of the pre-2017 demolished site. This is obviously a preserved data set, practically, that perhaps this is what the AI will be fed, might see. It's obvious that they're looking at previous versions of the site and how they can utilize that. I did notice in the bottom here it said Archive Ready, and I did use the app and you can see a video. I can't show that video through the stream, but what I have done is downloaded the video. We see this, so we start to get an idea of what it might be like to be an autonomous system or an artificial system within the pre-2017 data. Quite an anthropocentric view, isn't it? I mean, you're looking at it through human eyes, but it's still an interesting view that we wouldn't have considered beforehand. Okay, so this is where it starts to get quite interesting. We see on that point cloud from the previous page, they've highlighted the chimney, and then they seem to have, it almost looks like they've draped it in some sort of mesh. They've called it a static agent, and we can see here contaminated air going in through the bottom and filtered air. So it almost seems like, as well as reconstructing the previous monument that was there, the previous chimney to the power station, and we can see down here in this bottom corner, it's there's a quote from a Fawley resident talking about that the chimney was, if I can zoom in, but the chimney should remain as a reminder of what this space was, an industrial site of huge importance to our economic past and working people's history. It's evident that the chimney had a lot of meaning to the local residents, and perhaps this large static agent that we see here is an homage, if you like, to the previous chimney on site. It's also evident there's a lot of function to it. It's not just a remediating air, metabolizing the site passively. But yeah, really interesting stuff there, and just a few more views of it here. So following that, there's this large page here. So if we go down, we can see this is the previous elements of Fawley Power Station, the large turbine hall, chimney, control center. It says here, so 2018 fragment site, and then this is the site in 2018, so we can see the Fawley Power Station that's been kind of preserved within that point cloud, the control center there, and the chimney rising up there, and then this large orange sheet almost seems to be the current site. So yeah, site 2022. So we can see here there's large holes which seem to be representative of the foundations that were perhaps left post demolition. Interestingly, so again, large focus on contamination, tracked 3 different instances of contamination, so there's a lot of focus on the contamination and where exactly it is and how it spreads. So they're very much continuing the theme of fuel contamination here. If we look at that, we can see it tracked below here in a light section, and then here they're more specifically using it seems like they're using ecological survey data perhaps to track the time, so they're tracking the movement and spread of this contamination beneath the site. You can only hypothesize as to why they're tracking this. Perhaps it's to remediate it somehow or cure it somewhat. Perhaps it's more just to understand where it is so they can avoid it, just to reinforce their focus on contamination more. We can see here in the long site section they've tracked the point cloud data, mapping out the old Fawley Power Station foundations, how the contamination is interacting with that. Sam42 in chat asks, where do they get all this data from? Yeah, good question, man. I imagine most of it's from the ecological survey that they would have had to do pre-demolition, so they can understand. The accuracy that they've been able to track this with kind of vertically and horizontally would imply that perhaps they've used their, perhaps Marvin in some form can monitor this progress. The UK AI are interested in methods of bioremediation, which would probably indicate that they're tracking the contamination to remediate it as opposed to leave it, which is quite interesting. They're looking at different methods, flushing, excavation, excavation by remediation specifically. So yeah, we see two creatures here. They look similar to Marvin somewhat, but it's evident from this drawing that they are communicating. As we see LiDAR stream, it's a form of 3D space perception, so it's obvious that they're perceiving both the space and each other. Perhaps these are two kind of specific variations of Marvin that have been designed for Fawley. Now that they have their site locked in, they can actually tailor the agent more specifically to the site. And then yeah, in this series of 3 drawings here, we can see kind of more detailed drawings of the agents themselves, as well as how they interact with each other. You can see here, it seems like Asimov, is this Asimov? Yeah, so Asimov here is responsible for excavation, and then some form of, we can see a long boom here with water at the bottom, so it's some form of flushing perhaps, whilst Aki here, he seems to have the same boom. I'm not quite sure why that is. Yeah, it'll be interesting to try and work out. Oh, we just had a donation from Jake43. Thanks for the 5, man. Really appreciate that. He says, it seems like this is working in tandem with the previous one. Okay, so if the previous one was kind of pushing water in, perhaps Aki's function is to suck the water, the contaminated water, you know, once the water, because I've heard the process of flushing, which is you flush water in, it mixes with the oil, and you suck the water out, and then you separate the oil and the water. You have extracted the oil from the ground. So perhaps these two agents are working kind of in collaboration to flush the water in and then suck it out, and then through this collaboration in this autonomous process, you can actually remediate the site autonomously through the agents, which is really interesting stuff. And then the last chunk of this second leaked document is this patent drawing. So it's a patent drawing for Asimov, and we can just start to see a bit more of the functions and what this thing does with the kind of LiDAR units, the bladders, fluid flushing bladders. It's strange. It looks like a mix of a creature and a car. Which I quite enjoy. So we can see here in this isometric drawing just a bit more of the substructure detailing, the propulsion methods, and the fin on the back, and the kind of the boom, which seems to be retractable and folding. And yeah, it seems to be just like a rendered view of that same Asimov. I also noticed with this image in the bottom again, there was an Afterfire ready notification. I've downloaded that video again, get a kind of a first-hand view of what it might look like to be in a kind of a sales room, looking at Asimov in the front there, Office for Artificial Intelligence. But yeah, it's interesting to get that first-hand view. Well, that's it for the second live stream Uncoverers. Thanks for joining us. It's been really interesting so far, and I can't wait to find out exactly what this space is. Join us for the third live stream, next Monday 8 PM as usual, and this stream will be coming out in highlight form, so don't forget to catch that on the YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us, Uncoverers, and keep uncovering.